I started feeling these sensations like I wasn't the body, but I didn't, again, attribute it to understanding what was happening. I just felt like this must be what it feels like to die. But I wasn't having pain and I wasn't experiencing fear. I just was really focused on the breath and these sensations. And then I heard these crackling, popping sounds. But they weren't outside of me. I was them. They were not an inner ear or an inner hearing. You'll hear me talk about this. Like all the sensations we attribute to seeing and hearing are through these things on our body. It wasn't that. It was an internal knowingness that I was the sound. I was the sensation of crackling and popping. And that continued, and it got louder and louder, and I was becoming it. I was like, my whole body was booming and vibrating. And then I felt this pulling sensation. It was the strongest pull I've ever felt in my life, like something was lifting me. And all of a sudden, whoosh, I was out of my body, above my SUV, looking as though there was no rooftop on my SUV, down on my physical body underneath, which was moving and obviously very uncomfortable, very unstable, appeared to be in pain, but I wasn't having any of those sensations or feelings. And interestingly enough, there was no desire to get back in there. There was no fear for that thing that was in the car. There was no remorse or regret. There was no, oh my gosh, what have I done? There was just a peaceful, calm knowingness that everything was okay and just to trust it. And while this was all going on, I wasn't even recognizing what I had become, which was bodiless. I wasn't curious. There weren't thoughts happening about any of it. It was just a witness to it all. Like these eyes, but no one having them, watching this whole thing from above. And there was another sensation or a pulling, the popping and crackling again began, and just this freedom, like I was expanding, and again, a pull, strong, strong pull. I only can attribute it to upwards, but I now know there is no up or down. It was just a complete enraptured, going in every direction as energy. And that's what was happening. It felt like I had come out of a tuna can and my energy just wanted to expand into everything. And that everythingness was cracking and popping and sensations were pulling, and I became all of it. Up, 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 if you will. And all of a sudden there was like this burst into what I call the abyss or darkness. That may sound scary. It was the most loving, most pleasing sensation I've ever experienced. Pure bliss, pure love. I now know that was awareness. I became part of that everythingness. We call it God. As soon as we label it, it becomes a separate entity. So I don't like to give labels to things, but in sharing, of course, we have to. So whatever you refer to this as, source energy, love, God. For me, I refer to it as God, but not a being, an energy. And I was part of that again. There was an awareness of this, like I was home. I wasn't afraid. It was normal. It felt so peaceful. And I would have happily just hovered as everything, expanding, like the energy was just going in every direction. There was no more popping, there was no more pulling, there was just, the only thing I can ascribe it to was what I would think of as floating. But I wasn't an energy separate to float, I was just all of it. All of a sudden, I just knew, there was a knowingness, there was something else ahead, if you will. And I felt, again, more opening, expansion, boundless aliveness, a pulling sensation, more cracking, and an upward draw. And again, more expansion. All of a sudden I was getting these oh my gosh, these smells. But it wasn't, again, a smelling like we think of with our senses. I was the smell. I was hearing this glorious angelic sounds. I call it music, but it wasn't music. I was the tones. And I just, again, felt so safe. And there was this pink, this hue of pink. I try to recreate it with watercolors and such, but again, there's just no recreating what our linear brains see here, which is so limited. And I just felt yet another extension of bliss and peacefulness. I felt held in the grace of God, but beyond God, I felt like I was in a community energy, like I was part of something now, where in the abyss, I was all of it. Now this felt like not separation like we have in the 3D, but almost like there could be other experiences or other aspects of things. I now refer to this as heaven. But again, I don't like giving labels, but for the benefit of the listeners, it's something I think everyone can relate to. That heaven experience where we don't have to necessarily be oneness, but we can collaborate and experience other things, but very different than the linear. No need for a body still, although you can have that. No need to show up as an entity or an energy, but you can have that. And when I say you can have that, what I mean is I recognized thoughts seemed to be back, but they were very different than what we think of as thoughts. There was some ability to be taking in the pinkness and the sounds and the smells, but I was them, but I was also able to recognize I was them. It's, again, very hard to articulate in words. The next recognition in my now understanding of that experience was we were in what I refer to as a tomb. And this space was magnificent. It was almost like a marble stone structure, very magical feeling. And this is where I would say I had what many refer to as your preview of life. For me, it was different than a lot of other NDEers. I didn't have this lengthy, it didn't feel lengthy at all. It felt like seconds of my 38 years. I re-experienced everything. And each of the experiences, remember I mentioned that I felt like life was happening to me, and it was a very victim-y kind of perspective of how I perceived my life. It wasn't that. It was like everything was celebrated. The good, the bad, the right, the wrong, the sinful, the angelic. It was like the energies or entities that were in that space with me, which at this time I wasn't seeing anyone. I just could feel this enormity of ancestral energy and angelic energy and light being energy. And I just knew they were there without seeing them. I wasn't a body, but I was having what appeared to be somewhat of a separate experience of all of this and witnessing my whole 38 years. And every single thing was celebrated. Every segment was, you did it. Oh my gosh, you did it. And it was so loving, supportive. And this is where I was infused, is how I refer to it, or I was given a download to bring back of what soul plans are. And that came back with me. And that all of this was predetermined, and I was part of that discussion of my soul plan. None of this was happening to me. It was happening for me. And I was part of those engagements. I had so many beautiful experiences. I would not be able to cover all of them. And what's fascinating to me is all these years later, I'm still getting downloads of things that happened. Again, because we're in linear, we think that time and space is real. And so a then and a now is our reference points. But the reality is it's all happening now. And so all these paradigms and aspects are overlapping. We call it reincarnation, or we say we have many lives. But what I was shown is every time we take a breath and we take a new one, that is a death and a rebirth. In this life review, I just had an intuitive knowingness that they were preparing me to not remain here. At the time when I returned to my body, which I'll talk more about, I didn't realize that I was completely okay with this. But what I now know is there was actually resistance, and I didn't know it. And I did have a little bit of a tantrum and did want to stay, but my son at the time was very young when this happened, and yet I heard this male voice, and it said, "Mom, I need you to come back. I need you." And it was a male, and I saw this physicality walking towards my no body energy, and I recognized the eyes, and it was my son at the age of 21. How I knew he was 21, I don't know. I just intuitively knew. And he said, "I need you to come back. I need you." And again, he was very little at the time, 6, 7 years old. And I knew I had to go back. I knew he needed me, and I knew he needed me to be in the body. So as, again, this knowingness that the resuming to the body was going to take effect, I again knew that the archangels and the light beings and all of the energies there were leading me and guiding me. Again, no body, just a floating sensation through this bliss, these smells, these sounds, this love, this presence, this peace. And I was gifted with the most beautiful thing from the angels, which said to me, not in words and telepathy, "Your only role is to breathe and not resist. The rest is taken care of." Now, I didn't understand how profound that was. And I also didn't understand at the time they were saying, "And we always see you." I didn't hear that at the time. That came later. And the next thing I knew, the crackling, the popping, the sensations, the pulling down now, for lack of better terms, feeling like the body was now having to somehow reformulate itself, and this boundless energy was having to come back together. A pause in that abyss again. No idea how long. Also no idea how many downloads I was gifted with in that space. I now know it was 18 minutes apparently by the time they found me. I'll talk about that in a minute, but about 18 minutes that they had found me and were working on me and getting me loaded into a helicopter. We come back with these messages not to be special, not to be unique, not to seem to be some hierarchical change from you, not at all.